So we're on our way to Niagara Falls, Canada, and we're actually almost to Buffalo, New York, where I'm excited to eat some buffalo wings. But I thought I would jump on here and tell the story about the last time I was in Canada, at Niagara Falls, and I thought that I was going to get detained at the US-Canadian border. So a little backstory on that. I used to volunteer with an organization that actually mentored like young moms, usually like when they were pregnant and just newly moms. The government ended up stopping all funding for that, and I'm not going to say out loud why I believe that happened. But when I was a part of that, I was actually mentoring a young lady, and her name was Barb, and she actually ended up being like a really good mom. So basically all you did was you were friends with them, and it just offered some encouragement, to that way they knew that they could do the mom thing. And all of them seemed to do pretty well. It was a very successful program in my opinion. I wish they wouldn't have done away with it. But in doing that, so I was in my 20s at the time, in doing that program, they would get like various donations to like concerts and events and stuff. And Barb and I were able to go to different concerts. So like one of them was Miranda Lambert, and that was before she actually became really famous. She just had like more like a one-hit wonder at that time on the radio. So we got to see her. She and I also got to go and see Tommy Cash and meet him, Johnny Cash's brother, and then a couple others like that. Well, then one time they offered actually a trip to Niagara Falls, Canada, for us and our families. And Barb was very nervous to go out of the country. I mean, even though it was Canada. And this was after 9/11, but it was before the passport implementation happened. So you did have to bring birth certificates and your driver's license. So last minute, 5 a.m., Barb just is basically a no-show when I go to pick her up. Can't get a hold of her anywhere. So it ends up being just Faithy and I, and we are riding this bus. We go out to Canada. We get ready to go through the border, and we're told, okay, get your birth certificates and your driver's license ready, for just in case they pull us over. So we get all that ready, and then we get there. They didn't pull us over. They didn't stop the bus, anything. And we have this great time. It's just Faithy and I in Niagara Falls, and we had actually a really wonderful time. Then we go to come back, and at this point it's dark, and of course the bus driver gets on the intercom and says, everybody get your driver's license and your birth certificates ready. So I'm going, and my driver's license is nowhere to be found. I have a birth certificate, I have Faithy's birth certificate, no driver's license. I am searching everywhere on that bus. I have people around me searching, right? And all I can think is, well, hopefully they won't pull us over, because they didn't on our way here. What happens? They move the entire bus over in the side lane because they decide that they're going to check everyone's ID and birth certificate. So they pull us over. My heart's pounding. I'm young. I'm in my 20s. I have a child with me, my kid, who's single digits at this point. And the lady that jumps on the bus, right, to check everything. First of all, she's very masculine-like. Her hair is buzzed. She basically, so if you want to figure out what she looks like, picture a women's professional basketball player, and then kind of mix that along with maybe like a farm girl who won the world championship for bucking hay. So this is how she looks, right? Big and scary. And then you throw on top of that her personality. Her personality was like the head nun at an insane asylum. I'm not kidding you. So she comes by, she finally gets to us, and we're like 3/4 of the way down the bus. And I hand her the birth certificate, and I tell her, I don't have my ID, I don't know where it went, I'm an American citizen. And she just tells me, you better find it. And she goes back behind and she starts checking everyone else's. Faithy at this point doesn't fully know what's going on. She's just kind of like hanging on to my arm because she can tell that something's not right, and she's kind of scared to death. So next thing I know, she comes back to me, and I'm like, we've been looking everywhere. I cannot find it. I had to have lost this ID in Canada. So then she starts quizzing me. over Faithy's birth certificate, and then she starts quizzing me over my birth certificate. Of course I know everything on my birth certificate, you know, so not only do I get quizzed on my birth certificate, then I get questioned how I basically have my birth certificate memorized. But of course I'm going to have everything memorized, because in order to do like an astrological birth chart, you have to have your place, your date, and even your time of birth and that information for it to be accurate. So of course I'm going to know all that. And so then I'm like sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, because I know like too much information about my birth, right? We sat there, it felt like hours. I think it ended up only being like an extra 20 minutes that I probably had everybody on the bus hating me with. But it felt like hours. And finally she just said, all right, they're clear to go. So we were able to go over. Sometimes when I tell this story, people are like, man, was that really embarrassing? I'd be so embarrassed. And me, I'm just like, I wasn't embarrassed at all. I was scared to death, man. I thought they were going to lock me in like some international prison. I mean, I know it's just Canada, but when they get on there and somebody looks that scary, and I'm there like alone with my daughter who's like little, you know, at this time, and it's dark and you're tired and you've been on foot all day since like the wee early morning hours, you're exhausted. So that was my scary experience, and I have not been back, and I probably wouldn't be going back now if Alan, hasn't like begged to actually go to Niagara Falls, Canada for some time. He wanted to go because one of his YouTubers was there, and always like did recordings there, and I kept telling him, we'll go, one day we'll go. And we were actually going to go, but then they've had all these restrictions. Well, we just heard, I think it was October or November, they officially lifted all the restrictions. You don't need any testing requirements, no vaccine passports or anything. So we loaded up. We're going there while he can still use his passport before January. And we have our passports now that they're required. Thought about actually taping mine with packaging tape to my chest so nothing gets lost, but then I was afraid once I flashed that they would think something was suspicious and I'd get stuck with Big Mama wanting to do a strip search on me. So I've kind of passed up that idea. I'm just going to watch it very closely and not lose anything this time.